All right, this video is going to be expanding your palate for food and beverage. So if you work as a waiter and people ask you, oh, well, how is that dish? What does it taste like? And say you grew up on just meat and potatoes and you're working at a French restaurant or an Italian restaurant or an Asian restaurant. You might not have all the words that it will take to describe certain things. So what is the solution to that? I mean, how can you teach yourself, become your own teacher? Same thing with wine and beer and spirits. Learning the words that describe different stuff and getting the resources to where you can expand that knowledge and be able to communicate better about the subject. So one of the most awesome things that I ever did was every time that I would be on a shift, every time I was working, I would ask to try something. You know, we might have escargot, and I would ask the chef, you know, okay, so what is this particular flavor with that? Oh, well, that's the cheese that's melted on top. That has this kind of a flavor. And then he would teach me some of the words that describe that. Say you're trying out a new Cabernet Sauvignon red wine, and you read the description that's on the back of the label from the bottle or tasting notes that are available online, and you hear one that says black pepper. You think, black pepper. Okay, I know what black pepper is, so let me sip this and see if I perceive that. And your palate, there's some interesting research on perception. So they have some new studies that have shown that people with auditory perception problems in particular, was this case study, they actually have frequencies of hearing that, like if you were to graph out how well you hear stuff, there's a certain section that you don't hear as well. And there's no mechanical damage causing that hearing loss. And so they actually have these therapies that they do where they will play different sounds for you and you have to identify them, and you are training the connection between your physical, eardrum and your brain, and you're learning to perceive this frequency range. And then they'll graph your hearing again, and that big dip that you had in a certain place when you have those auditory perception problems will be corrected. It'll be normal, sometimes it'll be above normal, but you can do the same thing with your taste. So the main components for a palate are smell and taste, and then also for food in particular, texture, but I'll explain in a second how that applies to beverages as well. So smell, pretty obvious. You can smell by breathing in through the front of your nose, but there's also your secondary sense of smell. Say you take a sip of wine or you have a bite of food, and then when you exhale, or you breathe in through your mouth and exhale, you perceive the smells of the food through the back, and that lends itself to your sense of taste. That's why maybe when you were a kid and you had to take something that was kind of yucky, like a medicine, your parents said, okay, now hold your nose and take a bite of this, or swallow this, and that helps prevent the flow of the smell receptor, the chemicals that are going to go into the receptors through the back pathway. So smell is two ways. Taste is strictly salty, sweet, umami, bitter, and that's not actually different spots on your tongue like they used to teach us in school. It's actually, you feel like you're perceiving it in different places. You have all those different taste buds across your entire tongue, all over your mouth. So if you get kind of a drying sensation on your gums, or you feel kind of a drying feeling, that's like a bitterness. Of course, saltiness, we know what that's like, and sweetness. So an umami, that's kind of that hearty steak kind of thing. So you've got multiple different ways that you taste things. And then texture, you've got things that are buttery and rich. You've got things that are kind of acidic, and they kind of they're real thin, and they kind of like make your palate feel more dry. You've got liquid, you've got the chewing sensations, so you've got all these different things that have to do with texture. And texture can be a really big one for some people. So if a guest doesn't really like mushrooms, they might not like escargot, they might not like all these different things that have kind of like a chewier or a slimy kind of a texture to it. So that smell factor, oh sorry, the texture I was going to tell you about for beverages. So there's two components in particular in alcoholic beverages that affect the texture. There's glycerol and there's alcohol. And these both have kind of like a silky kind of a feel to them. If you've ever taken like a straight whiskey or a liquor of some sort, how it has kind of like a very slippery kind of feel. So you can actually have texture as part of your palate whenever you're drinking and perceive that. Wines that are very low in alcohol, they have a texture that's more like juice. And if you have a really high alcohol drink, it has a texture that's definitely more like alcohol. So the main point about expanding your palate for these kinds of things is to always be learning. It's to always be trying new stuff, to sample things. Oh, can I have a bite off of your plate? You know, when you're out with close family. If you're at a restaurant working as a shift, you know, asking if you go, oh, what is that? Yeah, could I try that? And see if the kitchen will give you little, you know, tastes of things. Asking your bartender for samples of different stuff, and, you know, trying new things. And another good thing is maybe side-by-side comparisons and seeing how things interact as well. That's another good one for like your wine palate, is if you have cheese with wine, or you have like a salty cracker with wine, or you have something that's acidic, like say you're having some orange juice, or you have a vinaigrette dressing on your salad and then sipping your wine. If you see what those interactions do, that's also really good for building up your knowledge of food pairing with drink, which as you get into waiting tables more and more, that can become really important. And it's really, there's very few books that are good at explaining the food pairing. It's a very kind of almost esoteric thing, and of course it's very personal as well for everybody. Everybody has different palates, but you know, you can get an idea of, oh, if you're having that really spicy dish, you're definitely not going to want this because it just won't pair well. Or if it's a really high alcohol drink with something spicy, it's just going to make the alcohol stand out more and give you a hot sensation. Just and then on the opposite spectrum, if there's too little of contrast, it's going to overshadow. Like if you're having a very hearty, rich steak with like a mushroom sauce over the top, and you get a very light wine, the wine is just going to seem insignificant next to all that richness. You need either good acidity or you need a good structure to the wine. But that is a topic for another discussion. So if you want additional resources, waiter101.com/blog. Got different downloads on there and more videos, different subjects. All right.